what you do every night, inspiring people to feel happy, is a very great thing.
From celebrities breaking down on live TV to activists hijacking the stage and icons doing the unthinkable, these are the most unhinged guests Arsenio Hall ever faced. 1. Andrew Dice Clay.
Because in New York, they got a different kind of mentality. Out here, you cross the street, cars stop.
Let's kick things off with one of the most shocking moments in talk show history. Andrew Dice Clay was known as the most offensive comedian of his time. His act was filled with crude jokes that targeted women, gay people, and basically everyone. When he appeared on the Arsenio Hall show in July 1990 to promote his movie, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, nobody expected what would happen next. Before the show even started, there was drama. Star Parody, the keyboard player in Arsenio's house band, refused to perform that night in protest of Clay's appearance. But the real moment came during the interview itself. Arsenio directly confronted Clay about the criticism of his act being racist and sexist. Instead of the usual defensive response, something incredible happened. Clay, dressed in his trademark leather jacket, suddenly broke character. The tough guy comedian actually welled up with tears in front of the audience. He stood up, squared his shoulders like Elvis, and his voice cracked as he told everyone that his comedy routine was the product of years of hard work to discover what's funny and true. He insisted his ethnic put-down style was just jokes, nothing more. The audience sat in stunned silence, watching this larger-than-life character become vulnerable on live television. This was the same guy who had just been banned from MTV for life and had caused Nora Dunn to walk off Saturday Night Live. Yet here he was, crying and defending his art to Arsenio and millions of viewers. 2. Vanilla Ice.
I mean, that's all old news. I didn't lie about
But
nothing.
I haven't interviewed you, so it's new news for my audience, so let's get into it.
In 1991, Vanilla Ice was one of the biggest names in music. His song Ice Ice Baby was everywhere, and he was selling millions of records. But there was a problem. Many people in the hip-hop community felt that this white rapper from Texas was profiting from black culture without giving proper respect. Arsenio Hall decided to address this head-on in what became one of the most uncomfortable interviews in the show's history. From the moment Vanilla Ice sat down, Arsenio went after him. He questioned his background, his dancing, his relationships with other rappers, and most importantly, his place in hip-hop. Arsenio made a cutting observation, telling Ice that he knew a lot of black rappers were probably angry because white people didn't buy rap until they saw a white face on the album cover. It was a direct, brutal assessment that put Vanilla Ice on the spot. What happened next shocked everyone in the studio. Instead of getting defensive or angry, Vanilla Ice responded with surprising honesty and intelligence. He acknowledged the criticism and explained his perspective on being a white artist in a predominantly black art form. His response was so genuine and well-articulated that something incredible happened. The studio audience, who moments before were ready to side with Arsenio, actually turned on the host. They started heckling Arsenio for being too harsh on his guest. 3. Queer Nation activists.
Well, there are a lot of gay guests who really don't like to talk about their sexual preference, so we don't know whether they're gay or not.
This wasn't a scheduled guest, but it became one of the most talked about moments in the show's history. During the taping on December 14, 1990, 4 members of the activist group Queer Nation interrupted Arsenio's opening monologue. They were strategically seated in different sections of the audience, and when they stood up together, they demanded to know why Arsenio never had any gay guests on his show. The confrontation was intense. One protester wore a Queer Nation t-shirt and challenged Arsenio directly about his booking choices. They specifically mentioned filmmaker Gus Van Sant and actor Harvey Fierstein as people who should have been on the show. The protest turned into a nearly 10-minute debate that got heated quickly. At one point, it devolved into a shouting match between Arsenio and the protesters. What made this moment unhinged was Arsenio's passionate response. He didn't back down or have security remove them immediately. Instead, he engaged directly with the protesters. His voice rising, he shouted back at them, defending his show. He yelled that he had many gay guests on the show, but it wasn't anyone's business what their sexual orientation was. He pointed out that he had featured Elton John and others, and the one thing he would never do was discriminate against a guest because of their sexual preference. The most powerful moment came when Arsenio, clearly emotional and frustrated, declared, "This is my show. I'm black, man," connecting his own experience with discrimination to the accusations being made against him. His first guest that night, Paul Hogan, even had to calm him down when the cameras came back on because Arsenio was still fuming. 4. Jason Voorhees.
I don't mean to laugh, excuse me, it's just the way I am. But you're angry.
Back on July 28, 1989, horror movie villain Jason Voorhees actually appeared on the Arsenio Hall show to promote Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Kane Hodder, who played Jason in the movie, came out in full costume with his hockey mask, machete, and complete silence. For those who don't know, Jason Voorhees doesn't speak in the movies, so this was going to be interesting from the start. Arsenio treated the whole thing like it was a completely normal interview, asking Jason questions about his anger issues, his declining kill rate in recent movies, and whether bad romantic relationships might be driving his murderous behavior. Jason just sat there in total silence, staring at Arsenio through that iconic mask while occasionally tilting his head. The whole interview lasted about 5 minutes, and it was absolutely surreal watching Arsenio try to conduct a normal talk show interview with someone who couldn't and wouldn't respond. At the end, things got even stranger when Arsenio hesitantly reached out for a handshake. Jason grabbed his hand and pulled him forward aggressively, causing the audience to gasp and Arsenio to recoil in horror. According to Kane Hodder himself in later interviews, the whole thing was actually Arsenio's idea. When Arsenio called him to appear on the show, Hodder reminded him that Jason doesn't speak, and Arsenio said that was exactly the point. He wanted to make it funny, precisely because of that limitation. 5. Bill Clinton. When Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton walked onto the Arsenio Hall show stage on June 3, 1992, he wasn't just there for a standard political interview. He came ready to perform. Clinton, who was in the middle of his presidential campaign against George H.W. Bush and Ross Perot, opened the show by playing Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel on his tenor saxophone while wearing dark sunglasses that made him look like one of the Blues Brothers. The sight of a presidential candidate jamming out on a musical instrument on late-night television was absolutely unprecedented. Nobody had ever seen anything like it before, and it changed the game for how politicians could connect with voters. This appearance was a calculated risk by Clinton's campaign team. They knew he needed to reach younger voters and minority communities who might not be paying attention to traditional campaign events and news programs. The Arsenio Hall show was the perfect platform because it reached exactly those demographics. Clinton's media advisor, Mandy Grunwald, had written a memo suggesting these kinds of softer talk show appearances, and they decided to go all in. When Clinton arrived at the studio, Arsenio even took issue with his boring striped tie and made him change it, giving him a loud yellow tie instead to match the show's energy. After the saxophone performance, which also included God Bless the Child, Arsenio conducted an actual substantive interview with Clinton. They talked about the importance of voting, race relations in America, and various campaign controversies. This was just a month after the Los Angeles riots following the Rodney King verdict, so these topics were incredibly relevant and urgent. Clinton came across as understanding, in touch, and genuinely concerned about connecting with people who felt disconnected from the political process. His wife, Hillary, even joined them later in the interview, and they addressed rumors about their marriage with humor and grace. 6. Magic Johnson.
If I don't never play again, if I die tonight, die tomorrow, I've had a super time, man.
Just one day after Magic Johnson shocked the world by announcing he was HIV positive and retiring from basketball, he chose to do only one television interview. He called his friend Arsenio Hall. The interview that aired on November 8, 1991, wasn't just television. It was history. This was one of the most emotional, raw, and important moments to ever happen on late-night TV. When Magic walked onto the stage, the audience immediately gave him a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. People in the crowd were already crying before a single word was spoken. Magic opened up about how he discovered his diagnosis during a routine insurance physical for the Lakers. He talked about the devastating moment when he had to tell his wife, Cookie, who was pregnant at the time. One of the most powerful moments came when Magic revealed that he told Cookie she could leave if she wanted to, and she almost hit him for even suggesting it. Throughout the interview, Magic showed incredible strength and determination, talking about his commitment to living and to educating people about HIV and AIDS, particularly in the Black community, where misinformation and stigma were rampant. During the conversation, Magic adamantly denied rumors that he was gay, and the crowd cheered wildly when he did, which unfortunately showed how much stigma and misconception still surrounded HIV at that time. He urged young people to practice safe sex and use protection, using his platform to deliver a message that could save lives. He also made it clear he didn't want people to fear him or avoid him, asking for hugs and support instead of pity. The weight of watching Magic Johnson discuss something so personal, so terrifying, and so immediate was almost unbearable for everyone in that studio. Arsenio himself was barely holding it together emotionally. 7. Louis Farrakhan.
It suits the government's purpose to say that the nation, and that's a big name, the nation killed Malcolm.
When Arsenio announced on February 7, 1994, that he would be featuring Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan on February 25th, the response was immediate and intense. Protests erupted from Jewish groups and gay rights organizations who demanded the interview be canceled. They cited Farrakhan's history of statements they considered anti-Semitic and homophobic, arguing that giving him a platform was irresponsible. Despite massive pressure from advocacy groups and even some of his own affiliates, Arsenio Hall refused to back down. He insisted the interview would go forward, standing firm on his belief that controversial voices deserve to be heard and challenged on his show. The night the episode aired, some television stations put disclaimers before the broadcast warning viewers about the controversial content. Arsenio had originally promised to air opposing viewpoints in pre-taped segments throughout the show, but he ultimately chose not to include them. Instead, the Farrakhan interview took up so much airtime that other scheduled guests, including gospel singer Kirk Franklin and his group The Family, were squeezed into just a few minutes at the end of the program. The decision to give Farrakhan essentially the entire show amplified the controversy even more. During the interview itself, Arsenio asked Farrakhan direct questions about his teachings, racism, and whether he had negative feelings toward Jewish people. Farrakhan denied involvement in Malcolm X's assassination and defended Michael Jackson, who was facing his first sexual abuse allegations at the time. Critics watching the interview blasted Arsenio afterward for not being aggressive enough in his questioning and for giving Farrakhan such a large, unchallenged platform to share his views. They felt Arsenio should have pushed back harder and more consistently on some of Farrakhan's statements. The fallout from this interview was enormous and long-lasting. Many people believe this appearance contributed directly to the show's cancellation just 3 months later, in May 1994. While Arsenio himself has always denied that the Farrakhan interview was the reason the show ended, insisting he had already decided to leave before the interview even aired. The timing was suspicious and the damage to his reputation was real. 8. Tupac Shakur.
Q-Tip just kissed her. She caught a cold or something. You know what I'm saying? That's what they said. And I was like, well, am I going to really, do it to her? They said no. So, well, ain't no need for me to take a test.
Tupac Shakur appeared on the Arsenio Hall show multiple times, and each appearance was memorable for different reasons. His relationship with the show started back in May 1990, when he was still a backup dancer for Digital Underground, performing the Humpty Dance with the group. By July 19, 1993, Tupac had become a solo star and returned to perform I Get Around with Shock G and Money B. That appearance was special because Tupac brought his mother, Afeni Shakur, to sit in the audience. During the interview, he discussed his first experience smoking marijuana and wanted to be able to see his mom's reaction while talking about it on national television. The 1993 interview also covered serious topics, including police brutality and his stance on social justice. Tupac talked about working with Janet Jackson on the film Poetic Justice, and the conversation touched on hip-hop's influence on real-life situations. Arsenio later said in a 2014 interview with Vlad TV that his favorite memory with Tupac was this conversation about marijuana and his mother calling him a unique contradiction. Tupac's second major appearance came on March 8, 1994, and this one was even more intense. By this time, Tupac was facing serious legal troubles, and he came on the show to discuss his sexual assault case, his role in the movie Above the Rim, and his altercation with filmmakers, the Hughes brothers. The interview was raw and honest, with Tupac not holding back about his feelings on any of these controversial topics. He performed Pain, a bonus track from the Above the Rim soundtrack, and the energy in the studio was electric, but also heavy with the weight of everything Tupac was dealing with in his personal life. 9. Whitney Houston.
Mama's coming. I said, oh, she ain't coming. I'm going to do it again. So I went further back and jumped, and went further back, kept jumping, and the last jump was right into my mother's arms.
Whitney Houston appeared on the Arsenio Hall show multiple times throughout its run, and each performance was absolutely stunning. In 1989, she delivered an incredible rendition of Hold Up the Light with B.B. and C.C. Winans that showcased her gospel roots and vocal power. But her most memorable appearance came in 1990 when she performed two songs that would become legendary moments in the show's history. First, she sang All the Man That I Need, a performance that had the audience completely mesmerized by her vocal control and emotional delivery. The second performance that night was even more special. Whitney Houston and Stevie Wonder performed their duet, We Didn't Know Together, live for the first and only time on the Arsenio Hall show in 1990. The song, which Stevie had written for Whitney's album I'm Your Baby Tonight, was about two longtime friends realizing they had romantic feelings for each other. Watching two of America's finest singers perform together was magical, and the chemistry between them made it even more powerful. Rolling Stone praised the song when it was released, and seeing it performed live on Arsenio's stage was a moment that fans still talk about decades later. Arsenio himself later said, "There is and won't ever be anyone as heavenly as Whitney Houston's voice," calling it unmatched in its beauty and power. During another appearance, Whitney even did an a cappella improvisation of the hymn, Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, that left everyone in the studio absolutely speechless. 10. Prince.
Thank you, Duke. You've always been a good friend. Always. And here's the interesting thing. Do you have a cell phone?
When Prince appeared on the Arsenio Hall show, he didn't just perform a couple of songs and sit for an interview like a normal guest. He completely took over the entire show and turned it into his own concert special. In 1991, with Patti LaBelle guest hosting for Arsenio, Prince delivered an entire episode's worth of music that left audiences absolutely stunned. He opened with Let's Go Crazy and Kiss, then launched into Cream and Daddy Pop, complete with multiple costume changes and full theatrical production value that you'd normally only see at an arena concert. What made this appearance truly unhinged was that Prince essentially used the Arsenio Hall show as his personal stage for an entire broadcast. This wasn't a standard performance with 1 or 2 songs squeezed between commercials. Prince took over the whole show, performing throughout the broadcast with the full spectacle and showmanship he was famous for. The production quality was insane for a talk show, with lighting, choreography, costume changes, and musical arrangements that rivaled any major television special. Arsenio and his team gave Prince complete artistic control, and he used it to create something unprecedented in late-night television. Perhaps most tellingly, Prince refused to do a traditional interview and completely dodged the interview couch like it didn't exist. He was there to perform, period. The legendary musician didn't want to sit and answer questions about his personal life or explain his creative process. His art would speak for itself, and speak it did. The performances were so powerful and so complete that an interview would have felt unnecessary anyway. Arsenio recognized that when you have Prince, you let Prince be Prince, and you don't try to force him into the standard talk show format. When the Arsenio Hall show returned for a second run starting in 2013, Prince came back for another appearance. This time it was bittersweet because it would be one of his final major television appearances before his tragic death in 2016. He actually sat down for a real interview with Arsenio during this visit, discussing his new album and career while showing a more reflective side. But the performances were still the highlight, proving that even decades later, Prince could command a stage unlike anyone else. The complete artistic control Prince demanded and received was unhinged for a talk show format where hosts typically maintain control, but it resulted in some of the most memorable musical moments in late-night television history and showed the unique relationship Arsenio had with musical artists who might not get the same platform or respect on other shows. 11. McHammer.
Strikes in a row.
See, I thought he was lying. 9 in a row?
He threw 9 strikes in a row, took my $500. He didn't tell you about that part either, huh?
MC Hammer was a frequent guest on the Arsenio Hall show throughout its original run, and his appearances were always energetic and memorable. Hammer had a special relationship with Arsenio, and the two were close friends, which made their on-screen chemistry even better. Hammer debuted Can't Touch This on the Arsenio Hall show in November 1989, giving Arsenio's audience the first look at what would become one of the biggest songs of the decade. His performances were always full of incredible dancing, elaborate costumes, and the kind of showmanship that made him a superstar. But one appearance in particular from the mid-1990s became especially controversial and memorable. Hammer came on the show to promote his album, The Funky Headhunter, and specifically his song, Pumps and a Bump. The music video for this song showed Hammer wearing nothing but Speedos, and there appeared to be a very noticeable bulge that got everyone talking. When Hammer appeared on Arsenio's show, the host brought up what everyone was thinking. Arsenio said that women in the audience wanted to know what was in his Speedos and the pumps, and a bump video, a clip from the controversial video, was then shown to the audience, and their reaction was enthusiastic and loud. Hammer didn't give a direct answer to the question. He just laughed it off with good humor. Then Arsenio delivered the punchline that everyone remembers. He looked at Hammer and said, "I guess that's why they call you Hammer." It ain't got nothing to do with Hank Aaron, referencing the fact that Hammer was originally nicknamed after baseball legend Hank Aaron. The audience erupted with laughter and applause at the suggestive joke. What made this unhinged was how openly and directly they discussed something so sexual on network television. MTV had actually banned the Pumps in a Bump video from heavy rotation, with censors claiming that the depiction of Hammer in Speedos was too graphic. Which guest shocked you the most? Comment below, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more insane moments from TV history.